This is Mark Tooley, President of the Institute on Religion and Democracy, with the delightful opportunity to converse with the online personage known as Redeemed Zoomer, whom I understand to be a worshiper within the Presbyterian Church USA, and among other reconquistadors, advocates for the reclamation of historically more liberal mainline denominations, that they might be brought back to theological orthodoxy. Redeemed Zoomer has a popular online following. He's the most prominent, to my knowledge, of all the reconquistadors. So, Redeemed Zoomer, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, thank you for having me on the show. So I'm a college student in real life, but online I do a lot of evangelism online, and I'm an activist, like you said, for Reformation in the mainline Protestant churches. I'm a YouTuber. I'm a Presbyterian, like you said, and I started a nonprofit called Presbyterians for the Kingdom as part of the broader Reconquista movement. And the goal of Presbyterians for the Kingdom is really just to promote good theology in denominations that do not have good theology these days, to try and restore the beliefs that these denominations were founded upon.
And you live in an East Coast city, I believe.
I'm originally from New York. When I'm at my university, I'm in Texas, but I'm originally from New York.
And have you found a Presbyterian Church USA congregation where you can worship faithfully?
Yes. So my home church, it's got some problems with liberalism, but at least it still preaches the gospel. The problem is many PCUSA churches literally do not believe the gospel at all anymore, do not believe the Bible is the word of God. Some of them don't even believe God is something that's actually real. They think God is just a metaphor for social justice and stuff. So those are the things we need to address first. Of course, it is a problem when churches preach political and social wokeness. That is something we are opposed to. But a much bigger problem is when churches starve their congregations of the saving gospel. So that is problem number one for us.
And it's very unusual, of course, for many people under the age of 50 to have any interest in denominations, much less the historic mainline Protestant denominations. What specifically provoked your personal interest in being part of the Presbyterian Church USA?
My initial draw to the PCUSA was simply because it was a local church near me, and the summer camp where I converted to Christianity was run by someone who was a member of the PCUSA. So I just had some connections to that church. But when I compared it to other churches, other non-denominational churches that a lot of people in my generation go to, I found that it was much more like rich and historically rooted in those churches. And I came to the conclusion that the reason why Christianity is losing so much ground in the West and has been for the past 100 years is because the institutional churches have been getting weaker as these disunited, disorganized, non denominational churches have been getting stronger. So I think if we're going to see a revival of Christianity, it needs to be from within the historic established institutional churches, rather than trying to split off and start brand new churches.
Of course, you appreciate tradition, you appreciate liturgy, you appreciate traditional hymns,
Hmm.
you appreciate the aesthetics of the beautiful old sanctuaries built by mainline Protestantism.
Yeah.
The Reconquista movement, how many are there of you?
There are over 2,000 Reconquistadors, over 2,000 mainline Protestants that are part of our movement in some way. Most of them young, but there are some older people. There's some Gen X and baby boomer pastors who are part of our movement, either publicly or privately. It's Pastors are usually part of our movement privately because they could be canceled by their bishops if they're too public about it. But yeah, there's a lot of people that are part of our movement. A lot of people that are on our online community. We have a Discord community where faithful Orthodox mainline Protestants can congregate.
So you are Methodist, Presbyterians, Lutherans, Episcopalians, any other groups represented?
The RCA, the Reformed Church in America, and American Baptist Churches USA, the Seven Sisters of the Mainline. So the denominations that are part of Reconquista are really any denomination that is sort of in communion with these broadly liberal mainline churches, because they all sort of share resources, share pastors. So retaking one sort of means retaking all of them, and losing one sort of means losing all of them, because they're all really in communion.
Now, others would say people, individuals, and groups spent decades trying to return the mainline Protestant denominations to orthodoxy, dating all the way back to the 1920s, but certainly many more recent movements in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and all of these denominations have officially liberalized on sexuality, except for the United Methodists, which will do so likely in May of this year. And I don't think the American Baptists have officially, maybe they have de facto. So, what do you say to the old timers who have tried to renew these denominations? What new formula do you propose that will give you success that failed for them?
It's simple. The answer is not running away. Because when you look at these splits, when you look at these conflicts between the progressives and the conservatives were always very quick to give up the fight, much more quick to give up the fight than the progressives. The recent formation of the Global Methodist Church is a very good example of this, where the conservatives won the vote and left. And yes, you could say they had reasons for leaving, but when the progressives lost the vote, they didn't leave. They kept fighting harder and harder. Generally, in these conflicts, the progressive sides have always been a lot more persistent, a lot more resilient, a lot more willing to keep fighting even after they lost battles. So generally, what has happened is most of the times when conservatives have split off, it has been not because they had to, but because they anticipated future progressive victories. For example, the PCA, the largest conservative Presbyterian denomination, they split from the Southern Mainline Presbyterian Church not because they had to, not because they were forced out, but because they were worried that the Southern Church might unite with the more liberal Northern Church. Now, of course, that did happen, probably because the conservatives all left. But it's usually conservatives, they go in starting with a retreatist mindset. They're like, we'll try to change some things. If that doesn't work, we're out of here. That was the case with J. Gresham Machen, who did try to reform Princeton, but even before he got kicked out, he said that if we can't get rid of these liberals, we have to leave. So the progressives win because they have a persistent mindset, they have a fighting mindset, they have a conquistador mindset, and conservatives lose because they have a retreatist mindset, they have a giving up mindset. So we need to abandon the retreatist mindset, because retreatism doesn't just apply to the church. Retreatism is the reason why the culture keeps drifting to the left, because people who are not on the left keep retreating. They retreat from mainstream universities, mainstream cities, mainstream everything, and they always try to start something on the side. But we need to reverse the retreatist mindset and shift to a reconquista mindset.
And are there enough reconquistadors to engage in this long term process across potentially several decades to make it work?
Well, the math checks out, because there are far more conservative Christians than progressive Christians if you take the total number of Christians who are like active in churches. If every single non-denominational Christian started attending mainline Protestant churches, the main lines would be completely taken over within a year. Because liberal Christians don't care about going to church. Liberal Christianity never lasts very long. And that's why even within mainline churches, the conservative congregations keep growing and the progressive ones keep shrinking. So the task of Reconquista is really just convincing people in conservative groups and conservative denominations that they need to return to the main line, that they need to come back into the fold. And if we can do that, then the victory is mathematically guaranteed.
And will it not be difficult for some of the reconquistadors, especially as they marry and have children and want sound Christian education for those children, if they're in a mainline Protestant denomination or congregation that lacks children, has no programs for children, or those programs are more progressive? Won't they be tempted to give up on the Reconquista?
That's a very big issue. Yeah, the Reconquista, to be successful and for people who have a family to be involved in it, it will require conservatives making subcultures. It'll require them making conservative subgroups, whether it's joining conservative churches in the mainline, because there are lots of very active, vibrant, healthy conservative churches in the mainline. That's the first strategy. If that's not possible, it's possible for groups of families within a more lukewarm church to organize a Bible study to teach their kids together. There are many possibilities. It's not going to work if you try to send individuals in to try and transform a church, because no one can stand alone. That's why Jesus sent out the disciples two by two. You have to send in groups. And hopefully, most of the Reconquista will not be about trying to send people into progressive congregations to change the congregation. It will really just be to bolster the existing conservative congregations, knowing that they're going to outlast their progressive counterparts.
So if there's a local mainline congregation that's already celebrating same-sex rights, for example, you would not join that congregation.
I wouldn't advocate people join that one. No, if someone's already a member of one of those congregations and they think they can still have a good impact, I'd say stay by all means. But Reconquista does not advise anyone to join those churches. Reconquista only advises people to join conservative-ish churches within the main line, because those are the only ones that are going to be left in 30 years. The main line is basically, it's a hollowing out tree. So if we just inject a bunch of faithful young Christians now, within a generation, they're going to be the only ones left. Mathematically, it's a foolproof plan. The only question is, are people willing to do it?
And you have a very large social media following. I believe your YouTube followers are over 200,000.
350,000.
350,000, an amazing number. I'm guessing the vast majority of these people are not themselves in mainline churches, but actually cheerleaders from evangelical churches. What is your sense?
Evangelical churches, Roman Catholic, Eastern Orthodox. The majority of my followers are not mainline Protestant, but a lot of people have joined mainline Protestant churches because of my videos. So I would encourage people, especially a lot of young people, are kind of floating between denominations. They're not really committed to anything. So I would take those people and say, why not join the mainline? There's a movement starting. It can be something to fight for. A lot of young men want something to fight for. So that's there aren't many mainline Protestants among my followers, but I'm kind of glad, because that means there's a lot of room to get more people into the mainline.
Now, mainline Protestantism obviously played an enormous role in building and shaping American democracy, serving as the mediating structures in America's civil society. Do you want to perpetuate that mainline Protestant tradition, or do you have an alternative political role in mind for a reconquered mainline Protestantism?
I now political theory is not my specialty. I don't see why it shouldn't continue. I think that America was one of the most successful societies ever, and it was founded upon the mainline church. I don't think you can restore a culture without restoring the church it was founded upon. So I definitely affirm the necessity of restoring the mainline churches for restoring any sort of identity to American culture. Now, what would the ideal political system look like after a successful reconquista of the culture? That I don't know. I'll leave that up to other people to decide.
Mr. Redeemed Zoomer, thank you very much for this introduction to your work. I wish you well and look forward to checking in with you maybe every 5 years to see how the Reconquista is coming along. This is Mark Tooley, President of the Institute on Democracy. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.